It is against my programming to translate words from the Sith.
This is The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel. And you're listening to The Stuff Dreams Are Made... Wait, I don't know. I forget. Didn't we have a new opening or something? Brought to you by Heritage. What was our new opening?
There you go.
I feel like we rolled into it. Oh, is it just like, and I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel, and we're brought to you by Heritage? I thought we said something else first. You're listening to the only prop collecting podcast brought to you by Heritage Auctions.
Yeah, something like that.
Is that better?
Going for higher degree of professionalism.
Well, next
as evidenced by this exchange. That's right.
in another week, we'll try that.
We'll get it right.
We're going to get there. Please write us in and let us know how we should start the show if anyone has any ideas. Yeah. But that's brought to you, this is exactly what Heritage is paying for. So they're gonna love that. So good. Thank you. What's new in props? How about that? What's new in props? I have, speaking of Heritage, an ironic story that I think you will like, Ryan.
Oh, okay.
So I can't say his name as he has not given me permission to say his name. But the gentleman that was
Jeter Paxson.
The gentleman that was the underbidder on the X-Wing reached out to me through the wonders of Instagram. And we have subsequently emailed back and forth and are eventually going to meet up. And I can't tell you, well, he is a he, so there you go. I've narrowed it down. Turns out he's a he prop collector. And the only thing I can tell you, Ryan, and the audience is he is a billionaire. And so yet again, I got to bid against a billionaire. What is going on in my life that this is my lot in life is bidding on high-end props against billionaires that can just buy and sell me like wholesale.
But in this case, credit to you, Dave. I mean, you Davided the Goliath. I
guess so. I guess I'm now
sling.
1 for 4. But yeah, I gotta, I think if I was back to just, when you're bidding on monkey radiators, there's less billionaires involved, I think, is my only real
No, there are
point.
a lot, actually. Yeah. They just don't care. That's the...
Okay, fair enough. I just need my billionaires just bidding on Nazi memorabilia. That's, just stick to your lane of Nazi memorabilia and lay off the movie props. Yeah. I laughed. I don't know what to tell you. I discovered who he was, and we emailed, and I just went, "Fuck me." So, yeah.
How does your death curse work? Is it only if you lose that they get?
I've only won. In this case, I think I did threaten to kill you if you bid against me. So we'll see.
We never did hold you to that, but this is that was a legally binding podcast promise, and I don't think he listens
to the podcast, although maybe. I think we're going to get together. I'm going to lure him to my apartment, and maybe if it's late enough in the evening, I will murder him. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what kind of mood I'm in. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks. Good for us. The listenership of this podcast probably means that no one will even know that happens, and this confession will probably not even register. Yeah,
exactly. This is the Donald Trump equivalent of shooting a person on Fifth Avenue. It's going on your podcast and saying, I'm going to commit murder, and no one's going to do anything really about it.
It's like tweeting on truth.com. No one actually sees it. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Right.
So, yeah. If you happen to notice in the news that a billionaire is murdered in Hollywood, I'll leave it at that.
Please.
How about you, Ryan? What's new in props?
Well, this isn't technically a prop, but there have been plenty of jokes in my life about keeping this particular piece encased in lucite somewhere in my house at some point. I had an insane experience this past week where Arnold Schwarzenegger was in town in London. He's promoting his new book, Be Useful, which it's part of his kind of like, I guess, fourth act, if he was a bodybuilder, actor, statesman, and now activist, I guess is his fourth act, or, motivational speaker. So he's done this really cool book called Be Useful. It's like the 7 rules for living a useful life. It's based on a something that his dad used to say to him in German all the time. I forget the German saying, but it was essentially meant be useful.
Basically, be useful. Okay.
Yeah. Are you being useful? So he was doing 2 speaking engagements out here. And in the past, I have, for such live events, I've asked my agents with one of the big agencies, and they have perks and things. Hey, can you wrangle me tickets? And sometimes these live events, sometimes they have them, sometimes they don't. It sort of depends how many events are there, what's going on, all that. And they came back and they said, yeah, we have a bunch of seats, so we can kind of sit you wherever you want. So
I'm not sure I ever realized, is he a client of WME?
No, he's a CAA guy. Yeah,
he is, but they still had some sort of whatever they had.
Yeah,
access.
I mean, they have like their house seats, as they would with like Broadway shows and things like that. Harder to do with Taylor Swift when she's in town, but in this case, they were able to provide them, and it was just because the event was sold out. So I took a friend, another collector friend of ours, and we went, and then about a day before the event, my agent texted me and said, "Hey, do you want to meet Arnold?" And I said, "Well, obviously." And he's like, "Well, I have an in. I have an in with somebody that owes me a favor who's close with the assistant, essentially, or one of his producers or staff, and I can put in a word." And I said, "Yeah, please do." And then very quickly it came back like, "It's done. They're fans of the show, whatever." So
that's great.
Continuing to exploit my employment to open doors. And so we went to this presentation, which was excellent. People I think forget that he's not just the Terminator. He was also the governor of the 6th largest economy in the world. Like the guy's speaking in front of a crowd.
The man is just damn charming. I mean, there's really no other way of putting it.
Exuding charisma all times. And so the show wrapped, and then we got directions to go back to this door and whatever. And then my friends actually and I, because I met up with other collector friends of ours that were also going to the show, they invited us all back, and we basically, it was a foursome of us that got 10 minutes essentially in a room alone with Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was insane.
Do you have a sense, were there like 100 other people that were waiting their turn for like a picture opportunity or something like that? Was he?
There were like 3 rooms of people, but it was probably 12 people in total.
Gotcha.
They probably took in like 3 groups of 4 or 4 groups of 4 or something like that. It wasn't.
No, I didn't know.
It
wasn't like a package thing where some other regular folk were buying a ticket for, they get their book, whatever, signed in a photo or something like that.
It did not seem like that. This was not a paid meet and greet thing. It was like there was some agent hookup thing going on, whatever,
cool.
And it was awesome. And I have to say, like, there was great trepidation going into that room because of my job. I've met a lot of pretty famous people, The Rock. I've met Will Smith, and both those cases, those were professional meetings, and both were delightful, by the way. I'm not saying, but there is a certain, I've also met others that will go.
There is a general lesson when it comes to famous people, which is just be careful what you wish for, that you end up meeting these people and they are persnickety a-holes, and you just sort of can't believe you've wasted your time, or that you wanted to meet them, and that who cares what part they played in your favorite movie, they're just kind of dicks, and you just makes you kind of. I've always avoided certain, like there are comic art people I collect, and people have been like, "Oh, you want to meet them?" And I'm just like, "No," because I've never wanted to meet them and then want to
sell your collection,
throw my collection in the garbage because I met them. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. But he was not.
No, he was. He knows exactly how to do it. And the charm was exuding. He was interpersonal. He asked questions. Where are you from? I got to say I was a subject of yours for many years in California, because I moved out there under I think the 2nd term of his governorship. And it was a lot of these things, it's very nice to like shake hands and say hello, and I'm a fan. I mean, there's probably a list of 5 people that I actually would get sort of, I don't know, fanny about, just because, again, not to be cynical or whatever, but I've been doing this job for a long time. You meet people, it's always very cool, but like usually it's just like, oh, that was a nice thing. This was insane. I mean, this is, he is, I mean, probably him and Harrison Ford would be at the top of the list. And I would have to say that with all respect to Mr. Ford, I would probably rather meet Arnold because I knew it would be like a more fun and entertaining meeting. I feel like with Harrison, it would be just a little bit more low key and sort of, maybe I would ask about my indie whip and he would yell at me or something like that. So, it was delightful. I mean, we talked about Conan, we talked about the Amazon project. He had some choice things to say about them. And I walked away.
That's great.
It was a collected moment in life. I don't know. I mean, I have to say I had a very
a great picture, by the way, too.
I did get a great picture. Yeah. I could not hide my shit-eating grin all time. My writing partner, Sarah, saw it and just said, she's like, you premiered House of the Dragon and I've never seen you this happy.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's true. This was bigger. And he totally delivered. And I have to say, like, I met John Milius as well about 10 years ago, which was a similar sort of nerve building experience because he not only I'm a fan but also a hero of mine and somebody that I really emulated early, and particularly his writing style and his larger than life epic building and all that. And he delivered too, and spoke so fondly of Arnold because we, of course, talked about Conan. It was just nice to kind of put the trilogy together. Also met Sandal Bergman, who was also lovely to me. So there you go.
Sandal Bergman? When was that?
I did. I was at the Hollywood Collector Show with Rob Klein, and
oh my gosh.
He was doing this like Wild West exhibition with the guy that played James West. Forgive me, Robert Conrad.
Yep.
Yeah, putting the costume on display and all that. This was many years ago, but Sandal happened to be there with a booth, and for whatever reason, it was like more of a, I don't know, 60s television kind of
so people were paying less attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like she had no one at the table, but she was accessible. So I just went over and I was just like, hey, I'm just a massive fan. I grew up with it. She came out of the booth, took a picture with me. I had met Milius, so I got to talk about meeting Milius. So at least I wasn't just fanning out on her or whatever. But she was also lovely, and it looks exactly the same, by the way. It's amazing. It was exactly what I would want it to be. I walked out with a happy memory. I came home. I did not want to throw out all of my Conan swords and Terminator jackets.
You didn't sell your painting behind
and
you
all that. I'm very happy to have him looking over my shoulder now. It was a delight. I mean, the man knows how to interact with his fans and create a memory. I mean, somebody that famous does that every day of his life, and the fact that he understands that and is dedicated to it, credit to him, and thanks to him, and thanks to the team for putting it together. It was pretty special. I can't really imagine meeting somebody that would now eclipse that for me in my life.
Oh yeah, well, buckle up, Ryan, because
actually, yes.
We've got someone that's going to rock your world.
We do.
Arguably the biggest guest in the history of, what's the show called? The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of.
Dave's so nervous about to bring the guest on that he forgot the title.
Truly
of our show.
The biggest star.
No, this is a big coup.
Yeah, this is a huge get for us. We apologize in advance for the British telecommunications system.
Yes.
The internet was not our friend this day that we kind of recorded this. And so this is if you're watching on YouTube, it's about to go to audio only with some stills and pictures and whatnot, because at some point or another, we kind of just had to shut down the video feed so that we could actually have a conversation, which was honestly a giant both nightmare and sort of mortifying. And yes, exactly. And but nevertheless, the biggest star in the Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of world, ladies and gentlemen, you know him as C-3PO, Mr. Anthony Daniels.
We've had things that we've called coups before on this podcast, but this actually This actually is a for real coup.
Just to be clear to our audience, a lot of times we introduce guests and then the joke is we don't actually have the guest and there's a moment of silence. And in this case, when we say, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anthony Daniels, and there's a moment of silence, we actually have Anthony Daniels. This is not a joke. There's no joke here. The joke may be on us. We're not quite sure why he's agreed to be here, but he is here. So ladies and gentlemen, don't turn your podcast off. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anthony Daniels. Anthony, thank you so much for actually being here. I don't know how else to say it. Thank you.
For being a coup. Nobody's ever called me a coup before.
You are a full coup.
You
have taken over the government. You have used the military and made a move on the palace.
Let's not go there. Right. Anyway, hello.
Hello.
Wonderful to have you.
Thank you for joining us. This catalog is just incredible. I think you could pick any 5 of these items and it would be incredible. And there's hundreds of them. It is a credit to Star Wars. It is a credit to you. It is a credit to the character of C-3PO. And we thought it would just be amazing fun.
It is a credit to Prop Store.
They did a heck of a job. Yeah.
I was introduced to them. Wasn't my idea. I had intended to leave such Star Wars stuff as I had in closets and attics and cupboards and drawers for my wife Christine to deal with once I'm gone, to become some kind of one of those translucent Jedi people in the movies. And she said, "Well, I'll have enough to do when you're dead without getting rid of all this stuff." So. And then it's been fun for us both to go, collecting all the things together, and Prop Store coming and doing this magnificent sort of research and presentation. And I'm just full of awe what they've done. And what is nice is I realized there are some, clearly very high-end items, but I really wanted there to be something for everybody. And, there's things around £100, dollars, whatever. So somebody can have a piece of the real thing. And a thing that occurs to me is that these are real things from the real person. So the history of them is absolutely guaranteed, because there's an awful lot of fakery on the web that really annoys me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they are authentically from you who played the part. And then also, in a lot of cases, there's obviously wonderful, whether it's screen matching or pictures to kind of go. And also, here it is, too. If that wasn't enough for you, here's this. And as you said, wonderful just from paper to a full-size helmet. I mean, truly A to Z. And I love that you went through on some of the smaller things and signed it all, too. So that, even if it is a somewhat, dare we say, smaller, perhaps less in the grand scheme of the history of Star Wars, less significant piece of paper, you also get the Anthony Daniels signature on it, which is sort of an extra nice thing.
Yeah, why not? For instance, there's a whole bunch of trading cards that, I know people really like to have in a set. So hopefully that'll be useful to somebody. And, they can afford that small item. Other things, I'm not sure I could afford them, so we'll see what happens. What we thought we would do is maybe just kind of go through the catalog a little bit and occasionally just ask you about items and things and whatnot. But we had a couple of questions just before we even get there. I should also point out, for the record, both Ryan and mine's wife would like us to sell everything right now as well. They would like us to get rid of our collections right now. Yeah, today, yesterday. Yeah. This is true. Another reason that I decided to work with Prop Store is that Christine and I have recently, in the last few years, been to people's homes and seen magnificent collections from real collectors who value and display the thing in their houses are big enough to have rooms set aside for stuff that they love, that they've seen on the screen, whatever, that they respect, that has a real history to it. And so I realized that the way I was storing stuff in boxes, in cupboards, not looking at it really, it was just filling space. And yes, your wives are quite right. And I think you should go. It's very cleansing. Really, it
Yeah,
became like
every great collection that you and your wife visited, there's a wife who would like that room back. Just know that. There, yeah.
But hey, let's not
This used to be the exercise room. This used to be my office. This used to be a child's room. I would like this room back. Yeah.
let us not put off
that should be our new
people who
promo,
are
Dave.
thinking of purchasing something from this auction, because these things must go.
No, they're gonna. Yeah. I don't think it's gonna be a problem. I don't think you need us to sell this stuff. But thank you for being here.
The great thing about a beleaguered collector's wife is that we rarely listen to them, but yet they stay married to us. It's the push-pull of the collector-wife relationship, unfortunately, for them.
We're all very lucky.
A big question, just as a starting point. Obviously, you gathered all of this stuff because you were obviously in the film. But are you yourself a collector? Was there an element of this for you that was sort of the collecting side of things, or was this simply
absolutely not?
You keep things from everything you've done?
It's just something that everybody does, I think, in work and whatever. And on a film set, there's so much stuff, and I'm appalled at what gets thrown away that has to be destroyed because you can't store it, like the original Millennium Falcon, and that does feature in the auction, where in my book, and I've written a book, I am C-3PO, the inside story, and I do tell the tale of finding the crew burning. Don't do that anymore. On the back lot, burning the shell, if you will, of the
Millennium Falcon, right? Yeah,
and I was like, I was strangely moved. I don't know why, but that thing had carried us around 3 movies by this point. And I just thought it was awful that it was all being burnt, plastic and the wood, and all the metalwork had been gone for melting down. And so I did pick up these pieces, and I wasn't sure what to do with them. So they went in a drawer, And we're talking, how many years later? 30 years? I don't know. Not good with dates. But
they were still in that same drawer or a different drawer at that point?
Different. We moved homes and they're in boxes and whatever. And so it was fun, finding these things in boxes, and some things I'd forgotten about, some things I didn't know I'd got.
Going back to the original Star Wars, when you were making it, obviously no one knew. You didn't know what it was going to be. Maybe you thought it was something, maybe, you know what I mean? But no one knew. So when you kept, your C-3PO helmet, it was just, I guess my question is, like, had you kept other little odds and ends from other things you'd worked on? Was this just Anthony Daniels par for the course at the time, before you knew, obviously, it was this monstrous thing?
Well, yes, I've never collected anything with a view to anything other than just have a souvenir. And eventually, over the years, we all accumulate stuff from all our lives, whether it's seashells from a favorite holiday that you had, or this iconic helmet, which wasn't iconic at the time. It was just actually a real pain in the neck, frankly.
Yeah, kind of the bane of your existence, right?
Literally.
Yeah, when I think about it now, actually, it's quite ridiculous, because I spent, weeks, certainly in that first movie, I think it was 12 weeks, sweating away in there, and really, really quite unpleasant. The magic thing about, for instance, that head is the beautiful face that Liz Moore, the sculptor, created out of nowhere. She just made this beautiful object. And, I was honor her memory in talking about it, because when I first saw it finished, I was just amazed. And of course, as a prop to wear, and although it's static at all times, it depends how I arrange my body, my physicality around it to change the expression on a perfectly solid object. And I'm quite proud of the way some bits of it turned out. So I know, and it is iconic as far as being a representation of Star Wars, that as soon as you see that image, it's like hearing John Williams music. You know where you are straight away. You know it's Star Wars. And that makes me feel quite proud. And I think it's great that hopefully it's going to go to somebody who presumably is old enough not only to want to purchase it, but have that ability to purchase it. And we're only talking about one object here, but somebody for whom it will mean a heck of a lot. It means a lot to me in other ways, and I'm not sad to see it go. I'm glad to see it will go to somebody who respects it and wants to love it and polish it.
And polish it, yes. I was fascinated to see, and again, now we're talking about some of the lots as we go through the catalog, but lot 358, the neck piece from Empire and Jedi, and then the various neck bolts, the way you were sort of, I guess, locked into that, to the helmet. I mean, it really did kind of lock your head in, right? I mean, I guess you could undo it. Yeah.
No, I was 100% locked in. There is no way, fully dressed, that I could. I've always said that, if the world came to an end and the Martians landed or whatever, I would be this thing, because I would have had to smash my body against a rock to get it off. So the headpiece, I do talk about it in the book, it took half an hour purely to get the bolts, which you can see, into the neck, which you can see, because every time you push the bolt, it pushed the neck away. It was like, and I was contorted trying to help them, and they were trying to not hurt me. It was awful, and that was the first day, and it got worse, and then it got better. So those little greeblies, and the greebly, a bolt or a greebly or whatever, a greebly actually is something that looks good but doesn't actually do anything, whereas those bolts really did lock me in with a kind of clunk click, and I was alone, breathing my own breath and sweating my own sweat, and being alone, no peripheral vision at all, and no real contact with anybody. So to see that object, and you can see in the catalogue inside, so you can imagine what it was. I was said to, I think George tried the face on once and then took it off very quickly, but he had no idea what I was going through in there. But, it was my job. I'd taken it on.
It was interesting also, there's a little bit of an evolution from just looking at the props that we get to see. Lot 348 are a pair of hands from Empire and Jedi, but then we've also got Lot 357, which are some of the individual fingers from the first Star Wars, A New Hope. And it does look like that those early version of the individual fingers must have been a slower, more difficult process than the later on just putting on a sort of a golden glove. Was that at least, was that progress for you?
No, the first fingers, and again, the prop store have displayed them beautifully on little plastic hands there. The first fingers were, I think they were aluminum, but they were very heavy. And again, I keep saying about this book, but that night before, Maxie and I sat on my bed in this horrible hotel in Tunisia, literally gluing those bits of metal onto a black glove, and I was wearing the glove, and of course the glue seeped through, and the whole thing was disgusting. And they were a mangle around my hands. You couldn't do anything with them. You couldn't pick anything up because they had no grip. They looked good, but they were utterly useless. I don't think. I always laugh about the scene where I pick up a little white communications thing. An intercom or whatever it was. And the only way I could pick it up was to have a sticky pad in the palm of my hand. And I kind of slapped it, and it glued itself, and then I lifted it up. So, I kind of like that way of cheating things, that it's not all digital. But those hands were dreadful. And therefore, in the second film, they made one piece plastic things. And the horror of those were, again, they were pretty useless because the plastic was pretty solid. And again, I couldn't grip anything. And they got better as my body heated them up and so on. But it was only, way up to I think in the last movie, The Rise of Skywalker, I could actually pick things up with my hands that had my knuckles and his knuckles in the same place. And I certainly remember in Return of the Jedi, I took an art knife and carved most of the plastic away so that you only had the back of the hand and enough to hold it all together. Because it was utterly frustrating not to be able to grip anything. Not good.
Well, imagine if they make another 3 movies, how good the hands are going to be. I think you're going to be really excited by that. Yeah,
I
give it
think
another.
we'll go
another.
Motion. No, we'll go motion capture, please.
No, another 20 years, they're going to really make a really good costume for you. I really am convinced of that. I have a question. Do you feel like you know more about Tunisian hotels than at this point any actor alive? Are you a travel expert on Tunisia at this point?
We did go back for one of the prequels, I forget. And what was really noticeable was that, yes, the country has improved. But what was scary was that the Luke Skywalker's home, the homestead with a dome and everything in the hole in the ground. Back in the day, Mark Hamill bounced down the steps into the little dome home. But he had to kind of squat down out of sight because the water table was 3 or 4 feet maybe below the surface. Huge water table, great resource. Going back all those years later, when hotels and tourism had reached that area, the water table had dropped so far that we could stand in that hole in the ground and walk up into shot. And that was a real lesson to me about the way mankind, and in this case tourism, affects things. It's not a place I would rush back to, frankly, and I know people have a great time going and researching the various bits of set. What is funny, actually, is, all the stuff in the auction. Back in the day, like my feet, I had deck shoes on and sort of gold-coloured plastic, very cheap overshoes that, would be cut up with a pair of scissors and taped on and whatever. And often bits would blow away or just, dropped out of sight. And I still think there are grains of that in the desert there as the sand whittles them away. Sort of DNA of Star Wars.
You're a part of Tunisia.
Frightening thought.
I wanted to ask about the undersuits. I think these are so fantastic. I guess, I was aware that obviously aware that there were the helmets and metal or cast parts that were being used to kind of clad around you to make the suit. But I guess I never really thought of what was underneath there. And I love all these little details, and lot 364 through 366, all the little elbow patches and things. And I was just curious, because there are clearly some differences in these, but was that improving as you went along? I mean, how are those kind of different, or was that sort of all just a just a black undersuit that they used to clad you in your golden prison?
Yes, you definitely needed some protection against the inside of the suit because it was a lot of fiberglass, which still gives me the creeps, that itchy, horrible, smell of it. Disgusting. So certainly you needed protection. And the idea of those beautifully silk-screened patches was that in some ways the film camera can be quite forgiving, as can the imagination of the audience, who would assume that this machine man was all wires inside. And of course, back in episode 1, he was you did get to see the naked C-3PO, but these were not randomly. They were obviously beautifully designed if you look at them, but they didn't mean anything other than to look good. But I do remember being in a commercial somewhere in LA, I think it was for a phone company, where we had a lot of extras, And I think third day, one of them came up and said, Anthony, the wires around your waist, they're different today. Well, I looked at security and thought, where are we at with this guy? Because it's not in the auction, but this kind of corset thing around the middle, they had real wires, and of course they get jumbled up, and but these are real bits, and they were sewn onto, had numerous sets of underclothes because they needed laundering at least.
Yeah, I would assume you would have just sweat through them.
Yeah, I would maybe wear 3 or 4 a day, so just get some kind of comfort. No, I don't want to go there. But I reckon my DNA is on all this stuff.
I was just going to say, in that extra's defense, he just wanted to add an Anthony Daniels to his collection. In his defense, that's all he wanted. Yeah, he had a kind of a glass box for you that was ready to go. Just FYI. Yeah.
We were Anthony. We were talking about the catalog the other day. We did an episode about the sort of prop store catalog as a whole because we do these for all the collectors that leading up to these auctions. Everybody kind of is interested in hearing what Dave and I think about the catalog. And one of the things we were talking about / really admiring was the C-3PO's lot 367 with the hand painted cereal box, and really just enjoying the fact that like that was the actual prop from the ad campaign was made it all the way into this collection, and we were just fascinated that you had kept that, and was wondering if that generated any particular memory for you about doing this.
Totally.
If you remembered which.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things, actually. The C-3PO's box is curiously one of my favorite things. There is certainly somewhere there is a packet of unopened C-3POs, but this box is the most beautiful piece of artwork created for the shoot in London, where we did the photography for the box, whereas the commercials we'd shot in sort of Death Valley area and all that kind of thing, which was hysterical because we made a whole set of commercials with C-3POs, which were just a circle. And they had no sugar in, so they tasted absolutely appalling, and nobody, would buy them. So then they went and chucked a bunch of sugar and made C-3PO8s, as I called them, which really annoyed Kellogg's because they they're C-3PO, they're twin rings. Anyway, and they were so sweet they became sort of good for putting on ice cream and things as topping. But I had such fun doing these commercials where offering breakfast cereals to aliens and things like that. And the whole make-believe of commercials and so on is great fun. And the fact that, there I am standing, and again, having to grip with these terrible hands a bowl of cereal and the box, I think is pretty magical. And there's a picture of me looking very young there. I can't remember when we did this, but hey. So, Star Wars has gone everything, whether you wear it or eat it or drink it or listen to it or whatever. And this is one of the, bit like the Christmas record. It's one of those things I'm not sure I'm very proud of, but it was great fun.
Did they send you crates of the cereal at one point? Was your house full of cereal at some point? Absolutely
not. I think I must have tasted it, and that's why I never opened the second box. It rattles for sure. So one of the things that really appalled me about arranging this auction was that Lucasfilm did used to send me a ton of toys and things, which I didn't have room for. So I would, give it to kids, give it to the local hospital and so on. And of course, I'm now deeply regretting it, but it's too late.
Well, but you made those kids, I'm sure at the time, very, very, very happy. So that's a good thing to think about, right?
Yeah. Oh, good.
You mentioned the Christmas album, which leads me directly to lot 356, which is the Star Wars Holiday Special binder. You do realize that this thing holds a very sort of funny place in sort of Star Wars fans' minds, because we all agree with you what it was, and yet it's a treasured memory at the same time. What do you remember of it? Yeah.
Well, I have really quite clear memories, and I keep talking about my book, but I do remember it there. It was I was going to say a nightmare. It was like being in a weird dream. It was all very surreal, quite a big stage, I remember. And the weirdest thing, okay, there was Carrie and Mark and Harrison, and I think Peter Mayhew was there. And then all these Wookiees in Wookiee costumes sort of trailing about as if in a trance. It was very surreal. And I had some really stupid dialogue, not nearly as ridiculous as things other people had to say. And I think Harrison was gritting his teeth, and it was sad. And we, as professional actors, you always try and do your best. But in this case, somebody must have been on something to even think about doing it, because. And you can see it on YouTube. I think it's all there, but nobody has ever sat through the whole thing. So when I found that I'd got the script, which was very nicely laid out and everything, I did flick through, but it is unwatchable, and you can read along. But then the Christmas album, yes, that was great fun, and of course it's a strange piece of kitsch, really, that people do put on at Christmas.
Well, I was going to ask about the possibly a happier special memory that you had done, the Muppet Show, Lot 680. There's some production ephemera from the appearance on that show, and I was just wondering, was that? I mean, I know that at the time that was like the biggest thing on television in England, and it was sort of an American import or export, and was, I mean, does that particular lot generate a happy memory of being on the Muppet Show, or is that something that you were sort of equally sort of wondering what you were doing with a bunch of colorful puppets?
I adored being on the Muppet Show. I'd watched it avidly. It'd been on for quite a while, I think, and the treat of just being invited to be a part of it. And curiously, it was in ATV Studios, which was across the road, literally, from Elstree Studios, where we were filming Star Wars. And they would bring out the Muppet Show every week, and suddenly there I am with Jim Henson, with a frog on his hand, and there we are with Frank Oz with his arm up a pig. It was hysterical, and the humor's right there. The timing of those actors. Well, you would eventually see, of course, Frank Oz be Yoda. But to be on this set, which was very different from a Star Wars set, because most of the characters, the operator is, as it were, almost on a floor beneath you, so their arm is up in the air and you're talking eye level. But their artistry was magic, and the silliness of Miss Piggy, pigs in space. Anyway, but the remarkable thing there, and you can see this on YouTube, is at the end, for no good reason, the story was pretty lame, but funny. And of course, 3PO tap danced in joy. And I've seen it on YouTube. I bounce around that set. There's no way I could do it these days at all. And I managed to, I think we did 6 takes. I did it 6 times. I didn't fall over, which was a miracle. I didn't hurt myself, again, a miracle. And then the great fun, of course, is the tap sounds, tap dancing, was the man with the tin tray who had a dubbing session afterwards and tapped away to my plonky plastic feet. So I have enormous pleasure in being a part of theatrical history there.
It's still a joy to watch. One of the batches of lots, if I may say, that really put a smile on my face was there's a whole bunch of lots from Return of the Jedi that involve you speaking Ewok, but also the stuff that, if I remember correctly, you talk about in your book about sort of how you got to kind of write a little bit the forgive me, the story of Star Wars that you tell the Ewoks. And these are, I believe, some of your handwritten original versions of this in a whole bunch of different lots in the 680s and whatnot. And it's fantastic to see, but also it's just obviously one of the great moments for C-3PO in the entire trilogy.
Yes, I'm remembering Ben, Bert, and I would sit down. He had a lot of reference tapes of various languages, so we would sit together and kind of write down silly words. And atoyam na, atoyam no, wait the guy, and it korebe manakutu Toronto gosh. Anyway, and we would come up with things that sounded quite obscene, so we didn't use those. But it became very inventive, and one of the loveliest times for 3PO, doing his job, only of course to be countermanded in The Rise of Skywalker, where he refuses to translate, having boasted for 9 movies that he could translate. The clever thing in the writing there was to have him, it is against my programming to translate words from the Sith. I think that's right. Anyway, can't remember.
Another wonderful piece that jumped out at me, and it's just a simple photograph, but it's really quite lovely. Lot 710, it's just a picture of you and Peter Mayhew on the set without your masks. And it's just a really, and obviously he passed away a couple of years ago now, but it's just a really, it's just a beautiful photo and just a nice little moment, I think, in your guys' lives. And obviously you knew him forever, but also, you guys, I assume, obviously appearances and all those kinds of things over the years.
Yes, and it's, he was one of the only character whose eyes really were his eyes. Chewbacca's eyes were his. You cannot see my eyes at all. So he had that expressive. He did things with that costume and with that face that made him very lovable. And it is fun to see us there because, of course, back in the day, the original film, basically nobody was allowed to know I was in the costume. So it was quite unpleasant actually to be negated in that way a long time ago. But so that is a pretty rare photograph that they, not even sure where it's what. Oh, Empire Strikes Back. Yeah. That's quite unusual because they didn't like people to know that I was inside a suit.
You mentioned photographs. There's a couple of lots of photographs from your own camera. Do you always have a camera on set? Have you always been a photographer? Is that something you kind of like doing?
Not at all. They are wonderful. I think back in the day when you had to have them developed, you took them to the chemist and all that kind of thing. But for the most part, you're not allowed to have a cell phone on a camera on the set because they are now terrified, quite rightly, of people taking spoiler shots and so on. A thing that I despise utterly, spoilers, the people who spoil. So these are terrible little. How can you say it? Back in an innocent age, where security in that way was not such a big deal. But they are, I remember the sets, they're on the Jabba the Hutt barge in Yuma, Arizona. And for the most part, they are, both up on the deck, and because the whole thing was built up in the air, so you could go down into the Sarlacc pit, which was basically the garage for all the trucks. So they are very innocent, and sunny conditions. It was all quite fun, really. Yeah.
That was obviously when you were working under the title Blue Harvest. Were you ever in a restaurant where someone said, "What are you doing here?" and you got to say, "I'm working on a movie called Blue Harvest"? Did you ever get to like tell the lie to anybody, or did most people actually know it was a Star Wars movie?
Well, come on. What you may be able to see in some of the pictures, about quite near to where Jabba's barge was, maybe half a mile away, was a big hill, sand hill. And people used to drive up and down it in quad bikes or whatever they were, all-terrain bikes, zooming up and down. And we had a perimeter fence around the set, to obviously keep it private, but it is public land. It's the desert around Yuma. And regularly, Mark and I would stand, because we were bored as heck, filming isn't all exciting. And regularly fans would come down to the perimeter and just snigger, really, like, yeah, Blue Harvest, huh? So how come there's a gold robot in this horror film, huh? Mark Hamill, Anthony Daniels. So we had quite fun about it. But because we ended up with all sorts of stuff with Blue Harvest on, horror beyond imagination. And it didn't work. Everybody knew. But they didn't want prices to be inflated if they knew it was a Star Wars movie, that everything would cost more. So I think it was a bit of a tease there. But kind of fun.
No, very, very fun.
Yeah, a favorite of mine, an actual image of C-3PO that hangs in my home in my children's playroom, Anthony, is one of my favorite Star Wars posters of all time. It's the "Parents of Earth, are your children fully immunized?"
Yes.
poster, which is a very sweet thing, but also took on an odd sort of relevance in the last couple of years. I love the poster. I picked it up at a convention, I think, maybe a year before COVID. Anyway, it hangs in the hall, and I just love it. And I love that you kept one of these. It's lot 784.
And I was just going to throw in as well, my wife is a pediatrician, and that's actually something I got her, and we have one of those as well. I got it for her office years ago. So it resonates.
Well, Star Wars has meant a lot to a lot of people. To the actors, we get paid for being in it, whatever, and the pride of being in it. But one of the things I like is when it has been used in all sorts of ways for good. That, for instance, in my case, yes, they came to me and, would I do this thing for polio and measles and whooping cough, I think, because they explained, these things are really dangerous. And so that was good. And then because of that, of course, I then got the health department. I wrote an anti-smoking commercial where R2-D2 finds a cigarette and all that kind of thing. And telling kids that it's not grown up at all and so on. But then, of course, the relevance in recent time, when they found that people were no longer vaccinated against measles, that there was about 4 years ago, I think now, before COVID. But yeah, we do need to be, we won't get into the anti-vax thing here, but I like to think that poster saved lives and that it made it amusing for people to think that these two metal creatures, were discussing something that was for humans only. So that was a real chance to do something nice.
I truly love it. One other one I wanted to jump in on, just because, again, you talk a little bit about it in the book, is in your book. There's a couple of lots where we get to see the production painting from Ralph McQuarrie. And I'm one of the co-authors of the Star Wars Ralph McQuarrie book with Brandon Allinger from Prop Store and Wade LaJose. And obviously, that initial image of C-3PO, that was one of the first things you kind of got to see before there even was a costume, right, of this character you were going to play. And it sort of struck you, if I remember correctly from the book.
You're absolutely right. And it was the point in George's office in London that, I was kind of not enjoying the interview because I wasn't interested in the job. And then he pointed to this picture on the wall and shorten the story, I was absolutely hooked. I can't explain why. There's no reason. It was the loneliness of the whole thing that Ralph McQuarrie had got there. This bereft character on a kind of moon surface and planets in the distance, and he just looked so forlorn and yearning to be with somebody. And I guess that was me. And I have to say, I always hoped George would give me the painting, but that didn't happen, did it? No.
I always hoped George would give me the painting, but that didn't happen either. Did you ever get to meet Ralph, may I ask?
Oh, yes. And of course, some years later, and of course I was able to say to him, "This is all your fault." And he laughed. He was a very, very clever man. And, quite a lot of his stuff, you don't realize it's matte painting and so on. It's his artistry. And curiously, that painting, it's a miniature one, but he has signed it there.
Yes.
It wasn't the deserts we worked on in Tunisia and Yuma. I've never been back to Yuma. I don't know why. Yes, I do. The deserts we worked in never looked like that until The Rise of Skywalker, where we went to the Kingdom of Jordan. And I got the real chills when we arrived on set the first day, drove into the desert. Suddenly I was in Ralph's painting. That was, 35 years after the original. And I was utterly moved by it. And there was 3PO at last in Ralph McQuarrie's real neck of the woods, really.
I was just going to say, he was using references, I think, from National Geographic. That's where he found his desert. Do you know what I mean? Like, so he was working in the idealized desert, and then you guys eventually found it. Two last things, and we can kind of wrap this up. Number one, I cannot go through this catalog. I mean, there are things I love, like the alarm clock, which of course I had on my my night table. But we must stop at 772 for the C-3PO tape dispenser. Can you explain it?
Well, to those who, I really would like people to see it, because I think it's made a ceramic product made by a company called, I think, Taste
Sigma.
Setter.
Oh, I thought it was Sigma. In the United States, I think it was Sigma.
Okay. Anyway, it is a small thing for your desk to hold a roll of Scotch tape. And it is 3PO, as it were, reclining in a sort of small chair thing with a roll of tape beneath his knees. And there is something so indefinably obscene about it that I adore it. It's one of and I did debate whether to keep it or not, because it's so appalling. It is truly, and on any given day with enough wine, I will act out the stands. As I did ask them, actually. I asked Lucasfilm if they were going to make a reverse, rather larger one with a roll of toilet tissue. They didn't think that would work. So it is there and you can have it on your desk and just pull a length of tape out from between 3PO's knees. It's lovely.
From the collection of Anthony Daniels.
Yeah.
Anthony, I was going to ask you, and you please feel free to go. You have no memory of this, but do you know that you and I spoke back in like 1998 or 99 that Steve Sansweet had put us in touch? I was a Seinfeld writer at the time, and we sort of corresponded by mail and maybe talked on the phone once or twice. And I think it was very early on, you had a minute where maybe you were thinking of selling one or two things. This is way back when. I don't know if you have any memory of this, but I figured maybe you'd remember Seinfeld. We never got anywhere, needless to say. And luckily for you that we didn't. But does that ring any bells at all? Or am I completely forgettable?
You're obviously completely forgettable. So no.
Perfect. Well, in my collection, I still have a couple of photos and a handwritten letter you sent me. So that will be in my estate sale when my wife clears me out. Yes.
Well, Forgive me. A lot of water has passed under a
No,
lot of bridges.
it is exactly how it should be. I'm actually happier you don't. It's a better story. So yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to ask Anthony, do you have a favorite piece in the collection? I mean, it could be the helmet. I'm presuming it's not the helmet because I think there's probably something has more something sentimental to you. But I was just curious of all of this, the thing that, I don't know, brings you the happiest memory, or that you have
It's it's a good question. In some ways, I go back to the Muppet Show, because that was just joy, and also it was the first time I felt, strange to say, at home, because the crew there was so used to looking after people in weird costumes and weird positions and so on. Whereas in Star Wars, I think I was, one of the few weird mechanical creatures. So much as people tried to be, helpful and kind and supportive, it was a pretty lonely experience. So on the Muppet Show, I felt very much part of a team, and which maybe wasn't the case originally. So whilst I try and think of other things, that might be it. And of course, the Ralph McQuarrie image just stays with me. There is one of the things that I do have a wonderful memory of is Lot 744, which is just a black and white photograph of 3PO standing in the middle on the podium in front of the RSO, the London Symphony Orchestra, rather, where 3PO took the baton at a sellout concert at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And the reaction when 3PO walked out onto the stage was stupendous. I actually stopped because I was so amazed, and I completely forgot what I was meant to do. And I just bathed in this sound. And then, of course, clicked in again, professionalism, got up on the podium and waved the stick, and they all took off. It was terrifying. Anybody who stood in front of an orchestra, and when you do the down thing and they all go boom, what happens next? It was totally down to the clever, talented orchestra to get on with it. I was just waving my time to the music, but it looked good. And then, of course, it was so overwhelming that John Williams came over and said, I think you'd better do it again. And so I did. And they went here. So I mumbled at him afterwards, shall I do it again? No, I think that's enough now. We left the stage. That was one of the truly greatest nights of my life. The feeling of power to have 19 musicians waiting to, blow, scrape, bang away at your behest. Magic. So there is a picture, and one of the things I love about it, and it's one of the smaller items in the whole catalogue, but the orchestra around me are smiling. Everybody's having a good time, and that's the way it should be.
That's the way it should be. It's a wonderful collection, Anthony.
Yeah, it's really just incredible.
To see
Congratulations.
It come to life. The live auction is on it begins on November 9th. There are more lots to be sold on November 10th. Question for you. I mean, you're a UK resident and spend a bit of time in London. Are you planning on attending the auction?
Curiously, yes. It's at the British Academy of Film, which is quite near where I am. And so we plan to go out to dinner and then gently wander over and check it out. And then I won't be there all the time, but I don't think I've ever been to an auction, so it'd be quite fun, wouldn't it? Not sure how it works, really.
They put on a great party, I have to say. Stephen and Tim and the prop store team. So I will be there live. So I'm hoping to say hello in person.
Oh, really?
Yep. Yeah. I'm a collector. I will be bidding with gusto and probably losing, but I'm excited to go, and I think it'll be fun for you.
What are you going to bid on? A Star Wars thing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do love, Dave and I have talked about this previously on the auction catalog episode. We both love the helmet so much. I mean, it's so great. It's such an amazing icon. And we've both debated, should we tow in? But for me, I would just love to have anything from your collection. I'm a screenwriter. I love the script lots and even the pages lots that are in here, the handwritten Ewok dialogue. So I think I will certainly be taking home something from your collection, as I imagine Dave will be as well.
And actually, you say about favorite things. I do like the handwritten, my horrible handwriting on those cue sheets. And of course, that was back in the days of looping, where, by the second, anyway, looping went on to ADR, thank goodness, which makes life a heck of a lot easier, automatic dialogue replacement. But I do like, though, and I still do it, writing big letters so I can hold it up in my peripheral vision whilst watching on screen, so it matches up, So in fact, in a way, those are very personal. So you have one of those on yellow paper, yes.
Excellent.
Something for everyone. So will you physically be there on the 9th, isn't it? Yes.
Yes, I will be. I mean, Dave lives in LA, so I think it will be me in person, because I'm a London resident.
I'll be on the phone. I'll be phone bidding. Sorry. Yeah.
If you really cared, you'd get on a plane and just be there.
No, I know. We like to wrap up the show really quickly with a game that we like to play, which oddly is a game where we usually play it with prop collectors. And I know you're not a prop collector, but we like to pick a movie and sort of name a favorite prop we'd want from it. And I know you're not a prop collector, but do you have an all-time favorite movie, like not related to Star Wars, obviously, but just like your own personal, just favorite movie in your life, just something that means something to you?
Well, I've got a range of favorite movies. Curiously, it's things like Mad Max movie. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is one of my favorite.
Fantastic. So if you could have any prop from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome in your house that your wife was okay with, and it would just be kind of, just on a shelf, like a little something, is there a prop that comes to mind? That this is the game, such as it is?
Well, I think of Tina Turner's shoulder pads. That.
Yes.
Do you remember the costume?
Yes.
Wow. Oh. Hey, I just thought of another thing on that theme, Barbarella. Anyway, that was long ago. So we'll stay with, I'm thinking through Mad Max.
I think Tina Turner's Tina Turner's shoulder pads is a fantastic Thunderdome answer. Yeah.
I think we'll do that. And if Tina Turner could actually come here and wear them.
It's a game, so why not? Ryan, do you have anything from that? Do you have an answer for
I think it's got to be a Master Blaster thing.
I was going to say, I'm Master Blaster also.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I feel like the Master Blaster little costume and whatnot, I feel like that's mine too. So, yeah, I agree. Well, fantastic. Thank you again, Anthony. The auction starts November 9th at propstore.com. Check it on out. Ryan will be there live. I will not be. Anthony Daniels will be popping in at some point at the live BAFTA party. Check it all out. And thank you again. And thank you, Anthony Daniels, for being a part of this on the Stuff That Dreams Are Made Of.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Dale. This is all your fault.